I could hardly wait from Britannia High School. And I remember, like, I had joined the Canadian Red Cross during the war years prior to December 7th. And I remember telling the girls, guess where I'm going? The University of British Columbia, and I am going to be a university student. It was just fabulous.
We did hear from time to time that perhaps we might be wasting our time attending university. On the other hand, there were other people who encouraged us and encouraged us to continue with the education.
At that time, there were a few students that were really anti-Japanese, you know. One day they were good friends, you could talk to them. Next day, a whole different ball game. That sort of hurt for a while, and I didn't really understand it, you know. So anyways, that's when I started to grow up fast, I guess. You know, learning how people can have prejudice.
We were quite set, personally I was quite set, I think all of us were quite set on going to war on behalf of Canada, because this was our country. And all of a sudden, we're told we're kicked out. And it was a shock.
While I was at the university, we talked about what's going on, this and that, and they said, while we were there, I think a notice came that there's no more school. I think it's February 25 or something like that. No more school. Anyone of Japanese descent, right, cannot go to school.
I was very disappointed having to leave the soccer team. I love soccer, you know. It's such a wonderful feeling. You have classes all day, and a nice fall day. You go out in the field. Yeah, that was, you know, you have a bond with the fellow soccer players. You know, you play soccer. They're very good friends of mine. And to leave my teammates, and I was captain of the soccer team, and that it was a big disappointment.
Our interest was initially, of course, with the Japanese community. And Powell Street was the main active street at that time. And Vancouver was right at Burrard Inlet, the entrance to the Pacific Ocean. It was an exciting area. We lived there for several years until I started to go to public school, and from the waterfront on Wall Street there, we moved up to Hastings East.
Through all my school years, though, I enjoyed every day, really. I did too. I remember all the good teachers, because in Hastings Public School, the teachers were excellent. Yeah. They understood our position. They knew we were Japanese, but there's none of we were the same. It's amazing. I don't know how my mother did it, but 7 of us. But somehow we were... She kept us together. She was the matriarch of our family. Yeah, and Definitely. We didn't miss out on anything.
There are no Japanese living around there where we were. And for my dad, it's quite nice. Well, in that his motive is to get assimilated with the Occidentals. And my dad, for his business-wise, he'd get a chance to learn more English, shall we say.
And my mother wasn't fluent in English over the years, but she understood enough to appreciate a Canadian joke.
I think we had a real intimate connection living in Hastings East, as well as much of our involvement was also with the Powell Street Church, especially with the United Church there. Reverend Kusaburo Shimizu was the minister of that Vancouver. Asahi baseball was right across the church. The big ships docked on at the pier at the foot of Granville Street, Main Street, and it was I felt a very exciting place to live. We enjoyed it very much.
Did your parents encourage you to go to university?
Oh, definitely. My father and mother were so proud because they were able to afford to send me, the first of the Nagatas, to go to a university here in Canada.
They were very proud of the fact that I had got into the university, because apparently in Japan it's very difficult.
In the Hastings East District, we had close relationships with a few other families, Japanese families as well. And one of the members was Tatsuo Sanmiya. And amongst our group who were just at the age of attending UBC together, Tatsuo had a car, which was unusual, but he was a leader in that respect. We met in Tatsuo's car at lunch with our brown bags quite a lot of the time, and spent our lunch hours that way. So it was probably more than timidity. I think we were rather a bit cautious in just being by ourselves. That was a part of the support effect of attending the University of BC. So Tats was instrumental in keeping things open, and certainly he introduced us to a lot of the kinds of wonderful things about mixing with other people too.
That's right, because having been living in an enclosed compound, so to speak, at home, for me to go to University of British Columbia and then having a university Japanese-Canadian Nisei club was wonderful.
It was. And that's how I got introduced to alumni there and met a few.
And when you think about it, the Nisei Students Club always were thankful in that. Yeah. You know, Vancouver really was not a quiet, non-racial city in those days, right? And to have a Japanese Students Club at the University of British Columbia was, I think, magnificent.
I take a lunch break, take my lunch with me and take a lunch break. And at that time I would quite often sit with some of my Japanese Canadian people from the Japanese Canadian Students Association.
Well, when I started, of course I love soccer. So as soon as I saw the people wearing this, I thought, I gotta play soccer and win one of these sweaters. So I played soccer, and I was able to win, you know, freshman award and the big block for 3 years in a row. And that was my goal.
I like about rugby, you could hit somebody. No, it's a flowing game.
We as students became members of the COTC, which is the officers in training, and we had our Enfield rifles and khaki uniforms and leather boots and caps, and we paraded up and down in training under Colonel Shrum, Lieutenant Colonel of the Canadian Army, who was at that time a professor of physics. And he, in his booming voice, we followed his orders and turned right and left and everything else and practiced on the campus.
I had very good days at the University of British Columbia.
December 7th, I was washing my father's car, and my father came out and said, Yoshihide, you know, the Japanese just bombed Pearl Harbor. And that's when and then that night we were having supper at 7 o'clock, and there was a knock on the door. So I went to answer there. There were two tall men in their suits there, and they showed me their badge that they were RCMP. And they asked me, does your father live here? And I said, yes. And then they walked in and they went through our whole house, top to bottom, opened every dresser, everything, and took all my father's insurance papers, passport, etc., and then took my father away.
Immediately, even our friends in Hastings East, especially if they were involved in business of one sort or another, the RCMP was visiting at that time and taking them over to the immigration building.
And I kind of smiled to myself. The next day I looked in the Daily Province, and he says that British Columbia citizens can rest in peace because the most dangerous Japanese nationals have been taken into custody, and they're so rest assured. My father, dangerous.
A knock came on the door, and somebody said they wanted to see my father. So I went to see my father, went to answer the door. Never. They said they're gonna. I never saw him again. Didn't know what happened. That's the start of the thing. What was going on? Told my mother, and my sister found out that he was taken by the RCMP somewhere, detained within Vancouver. And then from there, they sent him somewhere. And then so, what's going to happen?
With the advent of Pearl Harbor, of course, we had to hand in our uniforms. And that was, to us, we felt unfair. At least I felt unfair.
Immediately after Pearl Harbor, curfew was in place for Japanese Canadian. So we were supposed to stay in the house between dusk and dawn. Now, as I said, getting to the university took an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. No way I can get there in time. And here again, each professor that I had individually came to me and told me, he says, we have a standing order. When the classes doors close, classes in session, nobody breaks in. He says, you could ignore it. Whenever you get here, you could come in. And if you find that curfew is going to create a problem, you could leave when you have to. And this was every professor that I had came and told me that.
We had to evacuate Vancouver. We were all shipped out. And I forgot the exact dates, but when curfew was on for us, and practice would always end up just before sunset. We'd take a shower, and by the time we finished our shower and started to come down the hill to where we lived, the sun had set. And of course, I'm supposed to be at home, but if I got caught out, they'd just put me on the train and ship me out. So, a chap named Bill Orr, had a model, I don't know what, Model A Ford, whether the Ford or Chevy, I don't remember. But anyways, I used to lie in the aisle in the back of the car, and the boys would put their legs over me. Then he'd drive, and before he got to the house, he'd sort of slow down and look around, see there's no one hanging around. And then they'd say, "Okay, Tom." So they'd lift their legs, and I'd scoot out the door and run up the stairs. And my mother, aware of this thing, that type of thing, so she left the door open for me, and I'd go right into the house. So that's how we did our last games with the UBC.
Then I told my Professor Morrow, the head of the Commerce Department, you know, Professor, you know, I'm a Japanese national and I have to get out. So, you know, I'm in my final year of the Commerce degree. What am I going to, you know, I can't finish my course. And Professor Morrow was very, very sympathetic. He says, "Fred, I'll ask." He thought, he didn't think right away, but he thought about it for a night or so. The next 2 or 3 days, he came to me and said, "Fred, I've instructed all my professors to send you their course material by correspondence." I guess I must have studied hard because I graduated with first class honors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was quite, you know. So I got my degree, thanks to Professor Morrow. He was very, very good to me, you know, very good to me.
And also my Chinese friend says, "You want me to get your badge?" Because the Chinese had this Chinese badge, which allowed them to get out during the curfew and won't be questioned. Because for most of the Hakujin, they couldn't tell the difference between the Chinese and Japanese. So he said, "I'll get your badge if you want one." I said, "No, I'm going to break curfew." So I always broke curfew. Nobody bothered me. I was always there on time.
You know, I didn't know whether I told you, there's Kenji Kitamura. He took a mining engineering course. He completed 4 years, and the 5th year he graduated. But in the summer between 4th and 5th year, to get your degree, you had to work under the mine. But in those days, there was a law against Orientals working in mines to go underground. No Oriental could go work in the mine. So the UBC didn't give him a degree. He was shocked. We were all sympathetic when he went back to Japan. But UBC should have given him a degree. What working underground? What? You know, when you look back, you know, he was devastated. But that's how it was in those days.
People given notices of evacuating from their homes and making their way towards Hastings Park became part of the unsettlement of what was going on in our life. It was hard to understand for us as we were just youngsters, but I think our parents felt the brunt of that quite severely.
Well, my mother was devastated, you know, because she, you know, we were all, you know, I was the oldest, and I was around 23, 24 at that time, and I had all these younger sisters, you know.
You know, everything happened on December 7th. Everything is related to December 7th for me. When the two RCM officers came to my door and asked for my father. They wanted to speak to him. When my father came, the two men said, "Mr. Nagata, we would like you to come with us. We would like to ask you just a few questions." I wanted to know why. What were the reasons for him to go? Where was he going? When was he coming back? Where to, and why couldn't they ask the questions there. You know, they answered nothing. But that moment is something that I had to close for a long, long time. I was not able to talk about it, but I can now. Because I had to understand what happened to me at that time. When I saw my father taken away between two police officers, to take a man who was respectable. I loved my father so much. Honest, hardworking, and knew the Canadian ways. And then here is a man being whisked away without any questions. I was afraid. I was supposed to be respectful. I was supposed to understand this is the Canadian way where we are allowed to be questioned. And then at that moment, I could see my mother crying, wondering, and then my stomach was so upside down. I was anxious, frightened. I couldn't say I was angry. There was no room for me to be angry. I didn't have time to be angry because what behind me, after that, I did not go to UBC. I had a job at home to do. I had to find my father. So university for me ended. University of British Columbia, and that tore my mother's heart, really. She thought that our education was finished, but then with her spirit, no, she wasn't letting us think that. We must proceed. We either had to, my mother's decision was to take the family and go as the others to Hastings Park and to whatever development they were going to send. My mother was not going to do that. My mother wanted us to go to school. She wanted me to find a place where my brothers and sisters could go to school. And I really, as I speak now, I can't thank I can't thank my mother ever. If she could hear me today, I would say if it wasn't for her toughness, her dedication, none of us would be here today. She had a purpose in her life, and she gave that purpose to us. Never mind, shonganai, proceed, and we did. And when I was in the train, there were moments that I guess that's why I closed the whole incident of December 7th for me. Because in the train I thought, this is not right. This is not Canada. This is not what I'm learning. It's not right. But then things happen, right? Things happen. We must accept it, shonganai, and proceed. And with that courage, I guess that's what kept me going to today. Till today. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's okay. But I can't forget my father. For the first time, I'm able to see my father again walking away, and my mother. Because when my father came home, he was not the same.
No.
No.
He never ever said anything. But you could see from his eyes, you know.
No.
Yeah.
No. They changed him.
But I did say goodbye to my friends whom I knew, and we signed each other's autographs. So when this conference came along, I was thinking, gee, I wonder what happened to all these people.
I certainly am happy to see that and feeling very that the other students are deserving of having an honorary degree. I think it's wonderful. And it's really the first real indication, official indication of the university recognizing that we students were there, and in the subsequent journeys that we've had, we've made a fantastic contribution, I think, to to Canadian living.
They didn't kick their student out like they did in some universities in the States, where they were told to go, kicked out. The student just couldn't come back because the government took them all and shipped them out. Okay? So technically, if I was looking at it, I'd say, yeah, you really can't say that the university kicked us out. But I can say that the university kicked us out of the OTC, COTC, because they made us, struck us off the roster and made us turn in our uniform. Okay? And one of the requirements of the National Resources Act was that university campus had to have military training to be a student, part of the student body. So they kicked us out, which meant that indirectly we were no longer part of the normal university student courses, because this was part of the university course requirement. So therein, I say, lies some culpability.
I was fortunate through Professor Morrow that I was able to complete my course and get my degree, but the others, through no fault of their own, they had to get out. And now for the university to recognize that is great. I think it's wonderful.
That would mean to be a tribute to my mother, because she believed education was so important. And so if I was there, I would have got the degree, right?
For me, it's a closure to an open-ended situation. Because here I was going to university, I was going to get my degree, I was going to start my life that way, and it was disrupted. And having not completed the university degree, I said, I'm not sure whether I'm part of the alma mater or not. Okay? For me, this gesture, because I said, professionally and economically, does absolutely nothing for me. I'm 90. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't do anything for me, both either as a profession or as a financial, because I'm out of that now. I'm retired, 20 some odd years. But what it does mean to me is that the university has opened its arms and said, come back. You're part of our group, our alma mater. And in that way, I'm very grateful. When I first heard of it, it took about 5-10 minutes to sink in, and I was really ecstatic about it, because finally, university is saying, irrespective of what the conditions or circumstances, we are now prepared to make sure that you are part of our alma mater, you're part of our university organization. Belated, possibly. Under pressure, maybe. But still, those are facts. They've now welcomed me back into their arms. That's the way I feel about it.
Well, my father and mother I know, I wish I could give them the piece of paper to say, look, as Japanese Canadians, we were able to graduate from the University of British Columbia and proudly hand it to my father and mother, because it was such a rare opportunity for Japanese Canadian students to go to university. It was expensive, it meant sacrifices, and also we were bucking a trend. So that piece of paper, yes, I honor the University of British Columbia Senate for their stand.
I would think.
Of course, Vancouver being an inlet city of the Pacific, boats and fishing and clam, looking for clams and so on and so forth were part of our growing up activities. In the morning, the sun would shine on Sleeping Beauty, Dog Mountain, up on the Lions, up across on the Rocky Mountains. And in the evening, the sun would go down and they would blaze orange and to red and then to darkness. And that was a companion to that I've never forgotten. It was beautiful. Stanley Park, on the other hand, was right near the entrance of Burrard Inlet. We used to go down there in our bicycles and travel around when we were high school kids and come back home. Kitsilano Beach was right at the foot of that, and we used to go down there to swim and then come home after a little treat of fish and chips. So that's just part of the story. I have fond memories of Vancouver, and we were sorry to leave that place.